artist, and not in the traditional sense, but so I just remember drawing as a kid all the time and loving it. And it was kind of a big deal for every Christmas, every Easter. I'd get the big box of Crayola crayons with the sharpener in the back, and that was actually kind of a big deal. I still get it every Christmas, so it's cool. Fifth grade teacher I had a crush on. She said you should be an architect. I think I probably told you this story before. And so I started saying that, having no idea what being an architect meant. And then, as I got to high school, my guidance counselor was telling me how hard it would be to get into design school, and then I should have a secondary option, to which I said, well, we'll see about that. Somehow I got into school, and I found out all the freshman girls in the design course were taking graphic design. And so I told the boys in studying architecture, I said, yeah, I think I'm going to take graphic design for a semester. It never occurred to me there was a profession called graphic design or anything like that. My father worked in a paper mill growing up. My mom was a postal clerk. So I never, closest thing I had to a role model for advertising would be, Darren Stevens working at Man Tate, kind of madmen of 1965. I had no idea. But when I got there and began to see what they were doing, and certainly when I took the studios, I was like, oh, this is absolutely what I should be doing. Yeah, and there were a lot more pretty women in that. As a student studying graphic design, I think it was that I was just so competitive. I was going to do it. I was going to be good at it. I think I did have some ability to draw. But the school years were really concentrating on the process itself, which at first I thought was kind of a zen-like thing, like it was, some mystical thing, and which I think kept me confused for a long time. And as I got older, and like now, I think it's just this immensely kind of practical. It's a very simple thing to be creative and to work creatively with people and on things. It's extremely simple. It's just that so many people are really afraid of it, that they can't relax into it. Yeah, well, for me, I think one of the big transformations for me was learning, sort of giving up the preciousness of artifact as I think about design. So one of the things that, as a student, as a young designer, even, 10 years ago, was that we put so much emphasis on the artifact we were designing, whether it was an annual report or a brochure or a logo design or whatever. And I think there are good reasons for that, and I think that's probably a pretty natural journey for most designers to take. But for me, beginning to understand that the process that I bring to that problem solving, I can really apply it to any problem, whether there's a direct artifact at the end of that or not. So it's not about the artifact anymore. So for me as a designer, I still love beautiful things, but I would be bored to tears if that's what I was doing today. And there are people who are much better at it today than I am today, and so I'm happy to let that go. So for me, it's how do I use creative thinking and problem solving and design thinking to and apply it to problems that have nothing to do necessarily with an artifact. There may be or may not be, doesn't matter to me. Working with a company this fall, a company that had started off as one sort of company about 5 years ago. Their business model was based on one sort of thing, and they did that, and they were pretty good at that. But they have to change now. That's not going to continue to drive their business success. So they have to actually think about strategically who they're going to be next. So those of us who are creative in business have often left that to the MBA guys And they've certainly taken it and acted like it's such a big deal, and and putting enormous sums of value on that. Well, let's look at this differently. What does this mean? Let me show. And instead of me just telling them, in some sort of a PowerPoint slide deck or some stupid business school charts and stuff that don't mean a damn thing, I can create other ways of showing it and telling it and explaining it to people so they get it on a different level. So, and in fact, prototype it, right? Really create a way that they can see what that looks like. So, in that case, those pieces aren't about precious artifacts necessarily. They're just about smart, clear design that helps people understand stuff. And it's not even the artifact that's the end driver. It simply is what you do to help tell the story, create the understanding. Creation of business models. What's your business model going to look like? And what's the creative thinking behind where it can be from where it is today? And business schools have not taught that, and that's been okay for most of the 20th century. It's not okay today. The competition changes so fast, and so it means that you have to be able to change and look at things differently, very quickly, and without people who know how to do that working with you. I think those traditional MBA thinkers are in a place where their skill sets don't work as well anymore as they used to work. And so I think bringing a designer in there to help them start thinking in different ways. This isn't new in the business world either. I mean, Peter Drucker said if you want to see new opportunities, sometimes you have to see with new eyes. And that's all this is how do you look at things in a different way than you've traditionally looked. Business school models that build on sort of the late 20th century ideas, exploiting resources, exploiting people, controlling your competitors, controlling your buyers, your vendors, all those things they've taken them to the point where they're not sustainable anymore. So they've got to find new ways to compete. So I think that's where designers, and that's part of what I'm talking about doing. So in the past, I might have been called in by, a bank. We used to do a lot of annual reports for banks. So a bank might have come in to do their annual report, and we would talk about their year, what they'd done, and the year they were going to do. We'd try to visually represent that, and do those sorts of things. But today it's, our customers aren't pleased with this. How can we change their perception of who we are? And it helps if you actually change what you're doing. So we try to help them be more authentic about what they're doing, how they engage, and how to listen to those customers, because those customers will tell you how to do things differently. Again, very much design process, creative thinking, open, human, empathetic sort of models, not traditional MBA kind of models about how you think and engage and interact. And I think this is a place where designers have a great competitive edge and are very necessary. When I say designers, I mean in a broad sense. I mean, people who think differently, they may be writers, they may be poets, they may be, musicians, artists, people who over the last 50 years might have been seen as misfits in corporations, are actually the people corporations need to be recruiting, figuring out how to retain and take care of them and nurture them so that they can get that creative stuff from them and change their culture.